In the grim darkness of the far future, there are few beings as reviled, feared, and utterly depraved as the Dark Eldar. To most citizens of the Imperium, the very mention of their name carries a chill that no cathedral hymn can banish. They are whispered about in void docks and among soldiers stationed on the frontiers, like a nightmare that slithers in when the Emperor's light seems most distant. Yet the Dark Eldar are not some mindless horde, nor are they driven by a holy cause or grand crusade. Instead, their existence is a study in twisted survival, a society so corrupted by its own desires that it now teeters on the edge of damnation, yet thrives in cruelty all the same. The Dark Eldar, who call themselves the Drukhari, are descendants of the once mighty Eldar civilization. Long ago, the Eldar were rulers of the galaxy, a species whose technological and psychic mastery rivaled even the most ambitious dreams of humanity. They had transcended war, hunger, and even mortality in ways that seemed unthinkable to younger species. But such luxury and boundless capability bred not only brilliance but decadence. Their empire became a playground of excess, a festival of sensations that grew ever more perverse as centuries slipped into millennia. What began as pleasure eventually curdled into obsession, then into addiction, and finally into something that would doom their race forever. That doom took form in the birth of Slaanesh, the chaos god of excess, indulgence, and torment. When the Eldar civilization collapsed under the weight of its own corruption, billions upon billions of souls were consumed in a psychic explosion so vast it tore a hole into reality itself, the Eye of Terror. Slaanesh was born from their collective sins, and in that cataclysm, the Eldar became a shattered people. Many died, some fled. Some resisted through ascetic devotion, discipline, and the pursuit of paths that limited their psychic exposure. But the Dark Eldar, the ancestors of today's Drukhari, took another path. They refused to repent. They refused to abandon the pleasures that had defined them. Instead, they embraced them fully, even knowing that their every indulgence came at a terrible cost. Unlike their craft-world kin, the Dark Eldar cannot shield themselves from Slaanesh's hunger. Their souls are unprotected, and at death, they are devoured by she who thirsts. For the Drukhari, there is no peaceful afterlife, no promise of rebirth, only an eternity of torment in the gullet of a god born from their own vices. It is this cruel truth that defines the twisted existence of the Dark Eldar. To stave off that fate, they have learned a horrifying secret. They can slow their soul's consumption by feeding on the suffering of others. Pain, fear, anguish, these things are not simply entertainment for the Drukhari. They are sustenance. To cause torment is to survive another day. To indulge in cruelty is to preserve one's very essence against the endless hunger of Slaanesh. And so their society has become one of predation, raiding the galaxy not for conquest, not for resources, but for slaves and victims upon whom they might inflict their artistry of agony. To the Dark Eldar, torture is more than brutality. It is a science, a religion, and a form of art. Entire philosophies revolve around how to make suffering last longer, how to draw out fear into exquisite peaks before the inevitable fall. Where other races seek meaning in glory, honor, or piety, the Drukhari find meaning only in inflicting torment so they themselves can keep existing, even if that existence is a nightmare of their own making. Their home is Commorragh, the Dark City, a sprawling labyrinth hidden within the webway, a dimension between real space and the warp. Commorragh is a place so vast and complex that entire populations can disappear within its endless corridors and still barely touch a fraction of its depths. Imagine a city built not to serve its citizens, but to exploit them. Towers that scrape against impossible skies, arenas where screams echo like music, and palaces that house warlords whose names are feared across light years. Commorragh is both a sanctuary and a trap, the last bastion of the Drukhari race and a reflection of their corruption made manifest. Within its endless alleys and sprawling spires, cruelty is currency, betrayal is expected, and the pursuit of pleasure and power is the only law. Yet even in this cesspit of excess, hierarchies form. At the top stand the Archons, the masters of the Cabals, which are the dominant political and military factions of Dark Eldar society. Each cabal functions like a cartel of suffering, a coalition of warriors, slavers, and killers who serve their Archon with fanatical devotion, at least until an opportunity arises to betray them. Beneath the Cabals, the witch cults thrive, gladiatorial organizations where acrobatic killers duel and slaughter before massive audiences, their battles orchestrated not for war but for spectacle. The homunculi covens are perhaps even worse, flesh sculptors who twist life itself into grotesque shapes, crafting monstrosities from the living and the dead. These factions coexist in a tense, ever-shifting balance, sometimes allies, sometimes enemies, but always bound by the shared need to inflict suffering. For those unlucky enough to fall into their clutches, the Drukhari offer no mercy. Raids strike suddenly, their ships slicing through real space with predatory grace. A human colony may awaken to find its skies filled with ominous black silhouettes, its defenses shredded before they can even sound the alarm. The Dark Eldar strike with precision, not to annihilate but to capture. Whole populations are dragged screaming into the void, shackled and branded for use in Commorragh's endless cycle of torment. Some are thrown into arenas to die in spectacular fashion. Others are delivered to homunculi for experimentation, their bodies dissected and reshaped into horrors that defy reason. The unlucky may simply be kept alive indefinitely, their torment feeding their captors day after day. Yet this cycle, as grotesque as it is, cannot be dismissed as simple madness. It is survival. Each soul broken, each scream echoed, each drop of blood spilled. These are not mere trophies for the Dark Eldar. They are lifelines. The Drukhari cling to existence in the only way they know how, by ensuring that someone else suffers more than they do. And this is what makes them so terrifying to their enemies. Unlike the orcs who fight for sport or chaos warbands who fight for devotion, the Dark Eldar raid because they must. Their cruelty is not optional, it is existential. They cannot change without dooming themselves, and so they remain trapped in a cycle of indulgence, a race of addicts feeding their own survival at the expense of the galaxy. To understand the Dark Eldar is to confront the darkest mirror of sentient life. What happens when pleasure outweighs morality, when desire erodes restraint, and when survival becomes indistinguishable from cruelty? They are not monsters because they are alien. They are monsters because they are what any civilization could become if it abandoned every restraint in pursuit of indulgence. That is why their story is not only terrifying but also tragically familiar. Life within Commorragh is a paradox. To outsiders, it appears as a single sprawling nightmare, a metropolis where cruelty seeps from every tower, where screams echo endlessly in its labyrinthine streets. But to the Drukhari, this city is home, though not in the comforting sense that a craft world or hive might be to its inhabitants. Commorragh is alive with constant movement, a shifting ecosystem of predators and prey, where status is measured in how much pain you can inflict and how long you can stave off becoming someone else's victim. In the Dark City, survival is not guaranteed even for the powerful, because every alliance is temporary, every oath brittle, and every shadow hides an enemy waiting for their chance to strike. It is a world that thrives on tension, feeding on its own instability, because instability breeds opportunity. The architecture itself mirrors this mindset. The spires of Commorragh rise like jagged knives, black towers adorned with spikes, runes, and hanging cages. Streets are choked with markets where flesh, drugs, and even memories are traded openly, while higher levels host palaces of impossible opulence. Yet even here, grandeur is fragile. A single failed scheme can reduce a mighty Archon's palace to rubble, its treasures plundered and its former ruler dragged to the arenas in chains. The city never stops moving, never stops devouring, because stagnation in Commorragh is the same as death. To be irrelevant is to vanish, swallowed by the city's hunger. The Dark Eldar thrive because they refuse to stagnate, But this comes at the cost of perpetual paranoia. For the ordinary citizen, if one can even use such a term, life is defined by exploitation. There are no workers in the traditional sense, no families in the way humans might imagine. Children are rare, because reproduction is less a necessity and more an indulgence, something approached with the same cruelty and self-interest as any other act. Instead, the majority of Commorragh's population is composed of slaves stolen from raids, their labor extracted until they break. These slaves form the foundation of the city's economy. They build the spires, mine the resources, and die in countless numbers so their masters can live another day. Around them are countless low-born Drukhari, opportunists who scavenge scraps of power where they can, knowing full well that their lives are expendable. If they can survive long enough, perhaps they might catch the attention of a cabal, a cult, or a coven and climb a rung higher on the blood-slick ladder of survival. At the center of this hierarchy sit the Archons, rulers of the Cabals, and they embody the very essence of the Dark Eldar condition. Archons are not leaders in the traditional sense, for they hold no loyalty to their subjects beyond what is useful. They are puppet masters, orchestrators of cruelty, whose every move is calculated to maintain control while preventing their rivals from seizing it. Betrayal is not just possible, it is expected. For an Archon, trust is the greatest weakness, and paranoia is the greatest strength. They sit on thrones of glass and blades, knowing that any moment could bring assassination from a rival, rebellion from a subordinate, or betrayal from a supposed ally. And yet, their hunger for power never abates. Each raid, each plot, each act of domination feeds their prestige, bolstering their reputation in a society where fear is the only true currency. But if the Cabals are the dark heart of Drukhari politics, the witch cults are its public spectacle. Imagine vast arenas filled with cheering crowds, where gladiators perform not just for survival but for artistry. Wyches are athletes of death, acrobatic killers who weave through combat with balletic precision, transforming bloodshed into performance. Theirs is a theater of agony, where every strike is meant to entertain as much as it is to kill. Spectators roar as warriors duel with blades that drip poison, as combatants are released against beasts engineered to tear them apart, or as entire troops of slaves are forced into hopeless battles against Wyches who revel in their terror. To the Drukhari, this is entertainment on the highest level, a combination of skill, cruelty, and spectacle that feeds both the audience's hunger for excitement and the Wyches' hunger for souls. To watch suffering is to prolong one's own life, but to cause it firsthand is to bask in the purest form of vitality. And then there are the homunculi. If the Cabals are power and the cults are spectacle, the homunculi covens are horror given flesh. These twisted artisans are masters of bioalchemy, surgeons and torturers who see the body not as sacred, but as raw material for their creations. In their laboratories, reality itself seems to warp as flesh is stretched, bones are reshaped, and screams echo endlessly. They craft abominations, grotesque creatures stitched together from multiple victims, warriors reinforced with living grafts, or monsters designed solely to inflict fear. But their most horrifying gift lies in their manipulation of life and death itself. The homunculi can restore the dead, resurrecting Drukhari who fall in battle, provided they are brought back to the coven. This macabre service makes them indispensable. For the price of loyalty, or worse, favors, an Archon may rise again even after a fatal assassination attempt, ensuring that Commorragh's hierarchy remains as unstable as ever. In this way, the homunculi have become eternal power brokers, their grotesque experiments both sustaining and enslaving their society. Yet for all their differences, all three pillars of Drukhari society, the Cabals, the cults, and the covens, are bound by the same truth: the need to feed. This shared desperation ensures cooperation when necessary, but it also guarantees endless infighting. After all, why raid a distant world when a rival cabal is just across the city, ripe for exploitation? Why wait to capture slaves when you can steal them from your neighbor's pens? Commorragh is an endless cycle of predation turned inward as often as it is outward. That is why, despite its vastness, the Dark City never feels safe. It is a city where the knife in your back is as likely to come from a supposed ally as from a captured slave. But if the city is a reflection of the Drukhari's cruelty, it is also a prison. For all their mastery of the webway, for all their capacity to raid across the galaxy, the Drukhari are bound by the chains of their addiction. They cannot stop. They cannot reform. Even if an Archon wished to lead their people into a new way of life, they would quickly be consumed by Slaanesh's hunger. To survive, they must continue to inflict suffering. To thrive, they must take it further, to new heights of depravity. And so the cycle spins endlessly, each generation more dependent on cruelty than the last. This makes the Dark Eldar not just terrifying enemies but also tragic figures. Unlike orcs, who are content in their endless wars, or Tyranids, who act on instinct, the Drukhari are fully aware of their fate. They know what waits for them if they falter. The jaws of Slaanesh, an eternity of torment beyond imagination. Their cruelty is not a side effect. It is their only weapon against damnation. This awareness shapes every action, every raid, every betrayal. It is why they cling so tightly to their obsessions, why they revel in pleasures that to outsiders appear incomprehensibly vile. For the Drukhari, there is no tomorrow unless they cause suffering today. And this is perhaps the darkest truth of all. In their pursuit of survival, the Dark Eldar embody the very excess that destroyed their ancestors. They know the path leads nowhere, that it is a spiral tightening toward inevitable destruction. Yet they cannot turn away. They are trapped by their own nature, doomed to repeat the sins of their forebears. And in doing so, they have become something even worse. They are no longer merely victims of their past. They are the willing authors of their own damnation. To truly understand the terror of the Dark Eldar, one must imagine what it is like to encounter them firsthand. For the countless worlds on the fringes of imperial space, their presence is not announced with banners or declarations of conquest. There is no warning. There is only silence before the storm. A settlement may be living its ordinary life. Miners finishing a shift, guards patrolling the perimeter, families asleep under the glow of hive lamps, when the skies suddenly rip open. Sleek black ships, sharp and predatory, slip through reality like knives through flesh. No Vox transmission is intercepted. No astropath senses their coming. The Drukhari appear without pattern or mercy, descending upon their prey with lightning speed. Unlike the clumsy brutality of orc invasions or the apocalyptic sieges of chaos warbands, Dark Eldar raids are surgical. They disable defenses within moments, not to claim territory but to leave their victims helpless. Anti-air batteries explode in precision strikes, command centers are infiltrated before alarms can be raised, and the panicked population is herded like cattle. The raiders move like shadows, fast and coordinated, every motion designed to maximize fear. For the Drukhari, terror is not collateral damage, it is the primary weapon. Every scream, every desperate plea, every heartbeat accelerated by fear sustains them. To inspire terror is to taste life itself. For those captured, the nightmare has only begun. Shackled and dragged aboard their ships, victims find themselves crammed into cages of thorns and blades, designed not for security but for suffering. The journey to Commorragh is an ordeal in itself. The webway distorts time and space, making the voyage feel endless. Hours stretch into days, days into weeks, and all the while prisoners are deprived of food, light, and hope. The Drukhari guards patrol with whips and barbed spears, striking without reason, prolonging fear not to enforce discipline but to savor the psychic nourishment it provides. Some captives die before ever reaching the Dark City, their souls devoured mid-journey. For the Drukhari, this is no loss. They still fed upon their agony. Those who survive the passage discover that Commorragh is far worse than anything they could have imagined. To step into the Dark City as a captive is to step into hell itself, a hell not forged by gods but by mortals who learn to make damnation an art. Slaves are separated immediately. Some sent to the pens of the cabals, where they will be used as cannon fodder or living shields in raids. Others given to the arenas, where their deaths will entertain the masses, and the most unfortunate delivered into the hands of the homunculi, who regard them not as people but as clay to be molded, dissected, and remade into grotesque experiments. The arenas are perhaps the most infamous. Imagine tens of thousands of Dark Eldar, gathered in towering coliseums of black iron, their laughter echoing like a storm as they watch captives forced to fight for survival. The air is thick with incense and blood, banners of flayed skin flutter in the artificial wind, and at the center, Wyches dance with blades, cutting down their victims with elegance that borders on beauty. For the spectators, it is ecstasy. Each scream ripples through the crowd like music, each death a chorus to prolong their lives. The captives, terrified beyond reason, fight desperately, but victory is meaningless. The games are rigged, the outcome always inevitable. Suffering, death, and the slow unraveling of hope. The homunculi covens, however, are worse than death. Their laboratories are caverns of horror where the laws of nature are defied in service to cruelty. Captives are strapped to tables of obsidian and glass, their bodies sliced open while they are kept conscious through arcane means. Organs are extracted not for study but for play, nerves are stretched into instruments of endless torment, and flesh is reshaped into forms that mock the original being. Some victims are turned into grotesque servitors known as grotesques, mindless hulks of muscle and bone that serve their masters in battle. Others are experimented upon repeatedly, broken down and rebuilt until their minds collapse under the weight of endless pain. The homunculi treat such work not as sadism but as art, boasting of their creations as though they were masterpieces in a gallery. And in their warped way they are. To those on the outside, hearing of these atrocities, the Dark Eldar represent something uniquely horrifying. The Imperium views them not as conquerors or heretics but as predators, beings who cannot be reasoned with, bargained with, or understood. The Imperial Guard prepares for orcs with heavy artillery, for Tyranids with firestorms of ordnance, for chaos with faith and purity. But how does one prepare for an enemy who does not want to conquer but to harvest? How do you defend against those who measure victory not in territory gained but in the volume of screams carried back to their city? For this reason, Imperial commanders dread encounters with the Drukhari above nearly all else. Victory, even when achieved, means nothing if entire populations vanish into the webway. To fight the Dark Eldar is to fight shadows, and even in victory the losses are permanent. Even among other alien races, the Drukhari inspire a particular kind of fear. The orcs, for all their brutality, find them distasteful. Orcs relish a fight, but the Drukhari rarely give them one. Instead, they raid and vanish, leaving orcs frustrated and unfulfilled. The Tau, with their ideals of unity and progress, find the Drukhari an abomination, a reminder that not all species can be uplifted or reasoned with. The Necrons, cold and lifeless, see in the Dark Eldar a mirror of their own cruelty, though twisted by the hunger of the soul rather than the logic of metal. Even the Craftworld Eldar, their distant kin, regard them with a mixture of shame and horror. To the Craftworlders, the Drukhari are living proof of what the Eldar once were, and a warning of what they could become again if they falter. They hate them as kin who embody every sin they have tried to purge from themselves. Yet deep down, they cannot deny the shared blood that connects them. And herein lies one of the great contrasts of Warhammer 40,000. The Dark Eldar are both utterly alien and disturbingly familiar. They are not the unknowable hive mind of the Tyranids, nor the immortal constructs of the Necrons. They are not demons from beyond reality, born of raw warp energy. They are mortals, fragile, flawed, and utterly aware of what they do. They are, in many ways, simply us without restraint. Their cruelty is deliberate, their decadence chosen, their damnation self-inflicted. This makes them not only terrifying but also tragic, because their fate was avoidable. They had the chance to turn away from excess, to walk the path of discipline chosen by their craftworld kin. But they chose indulgence instead, and now they are trapped in a cycle they cannot escape. For the victims caught in their raids, there is no such philosophical consideration. There is only pain. There is only the knowledge that their suffering prolongs another's life, that their torment feeds a species too corrupt to save itself. And perhaps worst of all, there is no hope of rescue. Once within the webway, captives are beyond the reach of the Imperium. There are no daring missions to save them, no last-minute heroics to free them from the Dark City. Commorragh swallows its victims whole, and once taken, they are gone forever. It is this finality that makes the Dark Eldar so feared. Other enemies can be fought, and even chaos can sometimes be banished. But those taken by the Drukhari are simply lost. And for a galaxy already drowning in darkness, that is perhaps the cruelest fate of all. The strangest thing about the Dark Eldar is that behind all their cruelty, there remains a spark of brilliance. They are not mindless beasts, nor are they slaves to instinct. Every act of torment, every raid, every betrayal is calculated, deliberate, and performed with an almost artistic pride. To the outside galaxy, their actions appear savage, chaotic, and without reason. But within Commorragh, everything is guided by a logic twisted by desperation. Theirs is not a society driven by random madness, but by the cold, ruthless awareness that if they falter, they will be consumed. This constant knowledge shapes every aspect of their lives, from the smallest gesture of etiquette to the grandest war plan. Yet what makes them so unnerving is that they revel in this desperation. Other species cling to hope, faith, or ambition to justify their survival. Humanity has the Emperor. Orcs have the joy of endless battle. The Tau dream of progress. The Drukhari have none of these illusions. They know they are damned. They know their souls will never see peace. And instead of resisting this truth, they embrace it fully. For them, there is no need to seek redemption. There is only the pursuit of sensation. The brighter the flame, the sweeter the burn, even if it consumes them in the end. This is the twisted psychology of the Dark Eldar. They accept their damnation and transform it into their identity. This philosophy manifests in ways that are almost incomprehensible to outsiders. For example, consider the concept of loyalty. In Commorragh, loyalty does not exist in the same way it does in the Imperium, where soldiers pledge themselves to the Emperor, or in Craftworld society, where bonds of kinship tie individuals together. Among the Drukhari, loyalty is a tool wielded as long as it serves a purpose. A warrior serves their Archon not out of respect or duty, but because the Archon offers opportunities for survival, power, and indulgence. The moment those opportunities vanish, betrayal becomes not only acceptable but expected. To be betrayed in Commorragh is not a disgrace. It is simply the way of things. Those who rise to power do so not by avoiding betrayal, but by mastering it, anticipating it, and wielding it against others with greater precision. This mindset makes their political landscape a constant storm. Archons plot against rival cabals, Wyches sabotage one another for greater prominence, and homunculi trade allegiances like cards in a game of cruelty. Nothing is stable. Nothing is permanent. Commorragh is a place where today's ruler may be tomorrow's victim, where the mighty fall with shocking speed, and where those who survive are those who can adapt faster than their rivals. From a distance, this seems like chaos. But to the Drukhari, it is life at its purest. Life sharpened by constant danger. Life lived without illusions. Life in which every moment matters because tomorrow is never guaranteed. But what of the individual Drukhari? What does it feel like to live every day knowing that your soul is being slowly drained away, that every pleasure you indulge in, every cruelty you inflict, is not merely entertainment but survival? To outsiders, such a life seems unbearable. But to the Drukhari, it becomes normal. Imagine a constant hunger gnawing at your essence, a thirst that can never be quenched. Over time, suffering becomes not merely necessary but addictive. Each scream from a victim fills the void for a time. Each raid brings a fleeting reprieve. But soon, the hunger returns, stronger than before, demanding more. This is why the Drukhari escalate their cruelty endlessly. The things that once satisfied them lose their potency, forcing them to seek ever greater extremes of torment. In this way, their psychology mirrors addiction, with suffering as the drug and survival as the justification. This addiction bleeds into every aspect of their culture. Art, for example, does not exist for beauty alone. Instead, Drukhari art glorifies agony. Sculptures of twisted forms, paintings of despair, and performances that reenact torture as theater. To them, suffering is not only survival but also inspiration. Their weapons are not designed merely to kill but to maximize terror and pain. Blades are serrated not for efficiency but for cruelty. Poisons are crafted to prolong agony rather than deliver swift death. And even their armor is adorned with trophies of past victims. Every detail, from the design of a dagger to the architecture of a palace, reflects their obsession with fear and torment. Yet even amid all this horror, there is a strange brilliance. The Drukhari are innovators, constantly pushing the boundaries of pain and survival. Their mastery of the webway surpasses that of their craftworld kin. Their weapons, though cruel, are works of unparalleled precision. The homunculi, in their grotesque way, are geniuses of biology and chemistry, bending the laws of life and death with a skill unmatched by human science. And their warriors, from the Waishas in the arenas to the incubi who serve as mercenaries, are among the deadliest fighters in the galaxy. Their cruelty is paired with excellence, their depravity with genius. It is this combination that makes them so terrifying. They are not mindless killers, but brilliant predators. And yet, for all their brilliance, their tragedy remains. Deep down, many Drukhari understand the futility of their existence. They know that every act of cruelty buys them only another day, another week, another fleeting reprieve. They know they are not building toward anything greater, no empire that will endure, no legacy that will outlast them. Unlike the Imperium, which clings to the dream of survival through faith, or the Tau, who strive for unity, the Dark Eldar live only in the moment. Their society has no future, only an endless present of suffering and indulgence. This is their greatest strength, because it makes them utterly ruthless, and their greatest weakness, because it makes them incapable of change. There are whispers, of course, of Drukhari who dream of something different. Rumors of renegades who seek to escape Commorragh, to carve out a new path free of Slaanesh's hunger. Some whisper of forgotten technologies that might shield their souls as the craftworld Eldar do, or of secret pacts that might grant them freedom from their addiction. But such dreams are dangerous in Commorragh. To seek escape is to invite scorn, betrayal, and death. And so, if such individuals exist, they remain hidden, their hopes drowned in the screams of a city that demands suffering above all else. For outsiders, this contradiction is difficult to comprehend. How can a people so brilliant, so cunning, and so skilled also be so utterly self-destructive? The answer lies in their nature as Eldar. The Eldar are a race of extremes. Their emotions are deeper, their desires stronger, their passions fiercer than those of humans or other species. The craftworld Eldar channel these extremes into discipline, binding themselves to paths that restrict and focus their lives. But the Drukhari have no such restraints. They live their extremes fully, without hesitation, without guilt. In this way, they embody the pure essence of what it means to be Eldar, magnificent, brilliant, and utterly doomed. Perhaps that is why they fascinate as much as they horrify. The Dark Eldar are not just villains in the endless wars of the 41st millennium. They are a mirror, a reflection of what happens when brilliance meets indulgence, when survival demands cruelty, and when hope is abandoned in favor of sensation. To study them is to study the darkest corners of sentient life, the part that whispers that morality is nothing, that survival is all, and that if the price of one more day is another scream, then so be it. The Dark Eldar endure, not because they have hope, not because they seek glory, but because they refuse to die quietly. In the vast darkness of the galaxy, where so many civilizations rise and fall, the Drukhari cling to survival with claws of cruelty and fangs of despair. Their very existence is proof that survival can sometimes be the most twisted goal of all. They are not builders of empires or seekers of truth. They are parasites upon reality itself, sustaining their souls through the agony of others. And in this way, they thrive not in numbers, not in faith, but in the sheer will to live at any cost. Yet that cost is staggering. Every scream they harvest, every life they ruin, every soul they consume pushes them further into the abyss they pretend to defy. The Dark Eldar are like drowning beings who keep others submerged beneath them just long enough to gasp one more breath. And in that single breath, they feel not shame but ecstasy. For them, survival is not a burden but a pleasure, and it is this perversion that makes them so dangerous. To them, cruelty is not a necessary evil, it is the very meaning of existence. Still, one cannot deny a certain tragic brilliance in their defiance. The Imperium drowns itself in fanatic faith, hoping for salvation that never comes. The orcs rampage endlessly, enslaved to their nature without ever realizing it. The Tyranids consume because they must, their hunger written into their DNA. But the Drukhari know exactly what they are. They understand their damnation, they acknowledge the jaws of Slaanesh waiting for them, and still they choose to spit in the face of fate. They will not go quietly into that eternity of torment. They will rage, they will feast, they will scream with laughter and bathe in agony until the very end. That, in its own terrible way, is a form of courage. And yet, courage twisted into depravity is more frightening than cowardice, because it means there is no line they will not cross. No atrocity is too great, no cruelty too vile, if it buys them another heartbeat. To fight such beings is to face an enemy who has no future to protect, no greater cause to serve, no restraint to hold them back. They are already damned, and so they fight with the abandon of those who know they cannot lose anything except time. That is why their raids are so devastating. That is why their cruelty has no boundaries. That is why they remain one of the most feared forces in all of Warhammer 40,000. For their victims, the terror is not only physical but existential. To be captured by the Dark Eldar is to know that your suffering has meaning only as food for another's soul. Your pain will not inspire, your sacrifice will not be remembered, your death will not even be yours. It will be stolen, consumed, transformed into a fleeting reprieve for your captor. In a galaxy already without mercy, that is perhaps the most merciless fate of all, to become fuel for a race that cannot stop its spiral into damnation. The craft-world Eldar watch their kin with sorrow, knowing that the Drukhari embody everything they sought to escape. To the craft-worlders, each raid by the Dark Eldar is a wound that reopens ancient guilt, a reminder that their people are forever divided between discipline and indulgence, between restraint and ruin. But even they cannot destroy the Drukhari. Commorragh is too vast, too hidden, too entrenched in the webway to be purged. And so the tragedy persists, generation after generation, a wound that never heals. The Dark Eldar themselves, of course, do not see tragedy. They see only survival, only sensation, only the next raid, the next scream, the next fleeting moment of vitality. To them, tragedy is meaningless, a concept for the weak and sentimental. They are beyond such things, or at least they tell themselves they are. Perhaps, in their quietest moments, when the screaming stops and the hunger gnaws louder than ever, some Drukhari remember what their people once were. Perhaps they feel, even for a heartbeat, the weight of what they lost. But if such moments exist, they are buried quickly beneath layers of cruelty, drowned in another raid, another torture, another indulgence. Regret has no place in Commorragh. Only survival does. And so the cycle continues. The Dark Eldar raid, they feed, they laugh, they betray, they survive. Worlds are emptied, lives are shattered, and the galaxy trembles whenever shadows ripple across the stars. They are not conquerors, not rulers, not saviors. They are the eternal predators of the webway, living on stolen screams, sustained by stolen lives, defying oblivion one torment at a time. And until the day Slaanesh finally claims them all, they will keep hunting, because hunting is the only thing they know. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is no peace, no redemption, no salvation. And the Dark Eldar embody that truth more than any other race. They are proof that survival can be worse than death, that existence without hope is its own kind of damnation. They are twisted, brilliant, doomed, and unrepentant. They are the Drukhari, and in the shadows of the galaxy, they will always be waiting for the next scream, the next victim, the next fleeting taste of stolen life.